Hey guys, what's up? It's Greg Srivasti with the Find Your Film podcast. I found a film for this episode. In fact, hopefully every episode I'll find a pretty good movie for you guys to watch. This movie being, for this episode, is Place of Bones. Do you like horror? Do you like Western? Do you like horror Westerns? You might not. Give Place of Bones a shot. It's really worth it in my opinion. I'm looking at IMDb. The rating has it at 5.3 out of 10. In my opinion, there's 82 ratings. That's way too low. If you listen to our Cinematics podcast, I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Eric Holmes gave it 5 out of 5 stars. He has a really interesting rating where his version of 5 stars is 6.9 stars, which I think means like a 5-star classic, but he still gave Place of Bones 5 stars. And the other day, actually last night, he was mentioning to our group, our Cinematics Facebook group, saying that he feels that he may have rated Place of Bones a little bit low. I don't know if 5 stars is a low rating. So I also said, well, that would mean if you want to rate it higher, that would be a 6.9 star classic. And he said yes. So I'm assuming he probably changed or was thinking of changing his rating to the highest order possible. Bottom line, both me and Eric highly recommend Place of Bones for a number of reasons. And I don't want to really give the why. One of the biggest reasons is the spoiler section of Place of Bones. I'm going to put it up for a Cinematics Patreon community. Just spoiler stuff that we talk about Place of Bones. I actually have Audrey Cummings talking about the ending of Place of Bones as well. And I'll put that and mix it up in a spoiler discussion this week for our Patreon members. If you are not part of our Cinematics Patreon, please, that'd be a great way to support us. But we are going to give the spoilers away for Place of Bones this weekend. But then maybe a week or two, we'll release the spoilers later on our respective YouTube channels, either the Deepest Dream YouTube channel or Cinematics. So if you are not a Patreon member, don't worry. We're going to actually put the Place of Bones spoilers out in about a week or two. Just the Patreon members get early access to all our spoiler conversations. Now, what is Place of Bones about? It's set in 1876. There's a woman named Pandora, played by Heather Graham. She's a widow, and she's raising her daughter, Hester, played by Brielle Robillard. I've never seen her in anything before, and she's very good in this movie. She's quite the standout, and Heather Graham's excellent too. There are two of them. They're trying to live and eke out their existence in a remote ranch. It's sandwiched between, looks like mountains. There's a little bit of sprawl, but they are just secluded away. Again, this is set in 1876, and they're in need of just an upscale in their life. They're just trying to make it to the next day, it seems, until an outlaw, a wounded outlaw named Calhoun, played by Corin Nemec, enters into their fray, and he can barely walk. And what happens is they try to nurse him to health. And a lot of the story, Calhoun is lying down on, I think it's one of their beds. It's a bed situation. He's basically lying prone, and he can't move much because of his injury. He's wounded by his fellow cohorts who are really up to no good, and that those bad guys are led by this guy named Bear John, played by Tom Hopper. So Bear John is after Calhoun, and what will happen is it will lead to an inevitable showdown between Bear John, Calhoun, Pandora, and her daughter. Bear John has about several men along with him for the ride. So on a simplistic level, Place of Bones is a Western dealing with an inevitable showdown. I'm sure if you're a Western enthusiast, you've seen these type of movies so many countless times. Some of you may be tired of that construct. Well, the good news is Place of Bones has some very interesting, not just a twist in the third act, but it has some really interesting stuff in it. Well, first of all, it's a female-led Western. The big roles, even though Corin Nemec is really good, he's the third person in this ensemble, but it's mainly the interplay of Pandora, played by Heather Graham, and her daughter, Hester, played by Brielle Robillard. And actually, it's really, you know what? It's really a three-hander, with Nemec's Calhoun offering a lot of the, just a little bit of the comedy, a little bit of darkness. Calhoun is a very interesting person because even though he is an outlaw and he does get annoying in the movie because of his injury, and you don't know what he's trying to do. Is he trying to manipulate Pandora and her kid? Is he going to help them when the what hits the fan? You don't know where his character is going to go. That's one of the many reasons why Place of Bones works. Also, it's just when I talk to Audrey Cummings, it's a very immersive Western visually. Really had a good time with it. And the story is just well told. I was mentioning it's a lean and mean Western to her, and she breaks down how she and her DP stayed in that ranch for about a couple of weeks to map out visually the locations where, and when you see the movie, it's just a very well done film. And I really hope more people get to see Place of Bones. Again, August 23rd, as I'm recording this, it's out in theaters and on digital. Down the line, when it gets to streaming and whatnot, maybe it will have a bigger audience, but this is its opening weekend. So kudos to Cummings as well as the talent involved in this Find Your Film episode. Thank you to them for giving me some time for these interviews. And yeah, I think I'm blabbering and blubbering. I'm trying to actually make it sound interesting, but I'm probably not doing a great job. The only thing you can do is listen to these interviews and then take a shot, take a gamble on Place of Bones. Heather Graham's fantastic in this. Brielle Robillard's great as well. Corin Nemec is awesome. Look, you might know Corin Nemec from Stargate SG-1, I believe. He was a cast member on that. And then he was also back in the day, Parker Lewis Can't Lose. He was in the miniseries The Stand in the 90s. I believe that miniseries was directed by Mick Garris. He's had a very interesting, diverse career. And you can tell from the interview that he's very, very proud of Place of Bones. It's one of these things right now. I am a very big cheapskate. Okay. Even though I say find your film, I'm trying to give you guys some good movie recommendations. I am not a big purchaser of movies myself, even though I give you all these Amazon affiliate links and whatnot, because we get a lot of screening links for free, early access. That's the one great thing about not making any money on these podcasts, any discernible living. We get some free early access to these movies. And what's interesting is the last time I paid for a movie on digital was this movie Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. I believe it's a Japanese film. And I looked it up on IMDb, and it says it was released in 2020. So this movie was released back in 2020, Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. So it's been almost 3.5 to 4 years since I've purchased a movie on digital. And probably after, you know what? I'm going to buy it after doing this intro. I'm going to purchase Place of Bones on Amazon. I will provide you guys a link. I'm not going to tell you guys to buy it, but I think it's worth a shot. If you are a huge Western enthusiast, if you like Heather Graham, I think from what I've seen, this is one of her strongest performances. That said, you might know her from Boogie Nights, but in the Austin Powers and all that stuff. But she's been great in so many movies. I'm looking at her career early back in the day. She was Lost in Space, Bowfinger. But if you want to see some really, really good underrated Heather Graham movies, this one would be it. And then I'm looking at a movie that she did back in 2000, I think 14, with Zac Efron. Let me see. I think it was called At Any Price. This is Find Your Film, right? So I'm trying to help you guys with some kind of recommendation here. 2015, 2014. Oh, she was also in Californication. I believe it was called At Any Price. Yes, At Any Price. Hour and 45 minutes back in 2012. It's a drama with Zac Efron, and I believe Dennis Quaid was in it. Fantastic, underrated movie, and she's showed her acting chops in that movie. But this one, that was more of a supporting role for her. This one, she is front and center. Okay, so after watching, go see if At Any Price is available on Just Watch or any streaming service, because that's a really great drama to check out. But now for these purposes, tell me what you think of Place of Bones once you see it by emailing me or hitting me up on our Cinemax Facebook group. Here are my interviews with Audrey Cummings first, and then Corin Nemec. Sorry for the long intro. And yeah, I really hope you guys see Place of Bones. All right, guys, take care. Bye. I'm here with Audrey Cummings, the filmmaker behind a new Western called Place of Bones. Really enjoyed this Western. So the main thing, Audrey, did the script really attract you first, or are you a lifelong Western enthusiast, or maybe both?
I guess both. I always really wanted to take on a Western, and experience what it's like the old Wild West, the 1800s frontier. But this script came to me from a production company in Montreal, Canada. And as soon as I read it, I was like, holy crap, I've never seen a female-led Western before, like two strong female characters in a Western. So I was like, this film is perfect for me. And I called the producers right away and said, I'm in.
I mean, when you look at Heather Graham's career, just a very diverse career, I still think even though she's a celebrated actress, she's oftentimes, I think, taken for granted and, underrated as a just thespian. You know better than me. What was it like working with her, and what did she bring? What did she bring to the project?
She's amazing. First of all, let me start by saying she's a wonderful person, like so collaborative and kind and genuine. She has no like Hollywood attitude of, she is just such a gem. And what I really, really liked about her is she really dug in, like she worked hard before coming to set on her character and figuring out what women were like in the 1800s. And like, she just did a lot of pre-work coming into it. And she had to work hard to get a Western dialect as well. She had a dialect coach to learn how to speak in that Western slang, and which she nailed. And then on set, like she was just very collaborative and very open to just, working together and figuring out, what the best way of delivering this character to the screen would be. And I thought she nailed it. She did such a good job. So completely, the reason she did a really good job is so completely opposite to her, right? Pandora is cold and, calculated and dark. And Heather is just bright and joyful. So she did a really good job of acting.
This movie, it doesn't really follow one person as he or she goes through a linear path. There's almost intersecting stories. So just in layman's terms, what was it like just prepping and setting up your shot list? Because it's all over the place in a good way. And talk about visualizing and the challenge of actually helming so many different locations and making those stories converge.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, so Calhoun's character, Corin Nemec had to play basically in a bed the whole film. I don't want to spoil anything, but that's a challenge by itself. For him as an actor, it's a challenge. And for me as a director, it's a challenge trying to keep these very long scenes, interesting, because you're just, in that one room with his character anyways. And then you've got the bad guys who are out on the range riding horses and doing stuff. And then you've got, the surrounding farmhouse and barn. And it was really fun. Like I had the opportunity to work with Andrei Sekula was our cinematographer. And he did Pulp Fiction. He did Reservoir Dogs. He's amazing. And so I was really lucky. I had him for 3 weeks. He came and lived on this ranch house at the ranch with me. And for 3 weeks, we just walked the grounds every single day and figured out our shots and how we wanted everything to look and where it was going to be. And so I was really lucky because I'd never had that experience with a cinematographer before where I get his undivided attention for 3 weeks to figure out everything. So when we started shooting, it was just, we knew what we wanted to do. So it was really great.
Just on your filmmaking career, just in your journey, can you name just one piece of advice that was the most important for you in your growth as far as filmmaking advice, and what made it so special for you, that advice?
The one thing my mentor always told me was the more you prep, the better your film is going to be. And that's all I do is I prep and prep and prep. I work so hard breaking down each individual scene, like what's the heart of the scene, how does that feel the bigger story, what's the ins and the out of every scene. It's really important just to have I shot list, I do an overhead schematic where camera and actors are gonna the dance between the actors and the camera. I work that out. I do storyboards if I need to for certain scenes where there's action and things I want to convey to the cinematographer. And so I come in really, really well prepped. And it often falls apart because there's so many bad things that go wrong every day on the film set. Like I've never had one day in my life of shooting where nothing has gone wrong. So everything always goes wrong. But because you're so well prepped, you can absorb I don't know what you want to call it,
deterrence
the shock that comes your way, like all the bad stuff that happens, you can absorb it because you're so well prepped. And so I'm like, okay, I can get away without this shot and this shot, and I can converge this and do that. And you just have all the puzzle pieces. So, when things happen, you can still put a puzzle together, which is good.
You probably watched your film in the edit so many times, but is it kind of cool for you as a cinephile to know that you were able to, your DP were able to set up some of those great Western hero shots, like the Outlaws overlooking that mountain ridge, the POV shot with Heather Graham coming out of the door and you're just following her for a second out into that expanse. How cool was that? Just,
So cool. It's so rewarding. You dream it up, and then on the day when it's lit and it's shot and everything's like, and you're just watching on your monitor, and you just know, like, oh my God, this is so gorgeous. And everybody around the monitor is like, oh my God, it's so nice. It feels so rewarding.
I mean this as a huge compliment when I say this is a very lean, mean Western. Yeah. And a lot of people say, oh, well, but it needs all these things and dressings and everything. But I think one of my favorites, Bud Boddicker, or some of the great Western filmmakers, they just keep things lean and mean. Is there sort of a science to that? And is that an underrated thing where you can say something is a very tight Western? It seems a lot harder than one would think, right?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to make it look easy. And I also have the luxury of working with one of my favorite editors ever, Mike Mason. He's edited all my films with me, pretty much all my films. And, we have a similar vision in terms of lean and mean, and so not too much, But the thing is with this film, it had to be lean and mean because it's a slow burn. So it's one of the things I loved about it is like one of the A24 films where they take their time to like let you sit in the world and feel what the characters are feeling and uncover bit by bit what who the characters are and what they're experiencing, and then we hit hard later. And so in that first 3/4 or whatever, when it's more dramatic and more you got to be really lean and mean because otherwise you have a 3-hour movie.
Audrey, final question. Okay, so after watching Place of Bones, our listeners I do a podcast where I ask filmmakers to just suggest films for our listeners to watch right off the top of your head. Can you name a film that was very influential for you, not just as a filmmaker, but as a cinephile, and what makes this movie so resonant for you?
Oh my God. There's so many great
I know
films.
It's hard. Yeah.
Like a film that
resonates with you, maybe that inspires you as a filmmaker, that you maybe go back to time and time again and just watch. I know it's hard just to pick one.
It's hard. I mean, Alien, how many times have I seen that? Any Steven Spielberg movie. I mean, one of my turning points was E.T. With that film changed me, almost made me become a filmmaker. Oh my God. In the horror space, anything Mike Flanagan. Oh my God, there's so many. I don't know.
Well, then my final question is, I'm so excited to see your next stuff after Place of Bones. Where do you see, I'm sure this is, I don't know, I haven't seen your other stuff, but this, I really enjoyed it. And I'm really looking forward to what your future as a filmmaker. What can I expect? What can we expect down the road from you?
Well, so in terms of features, I have another feature that I'm shooting this fall, and it's another Western. A very different style of Western is all I can hint to. It's super cool. Like super cool is all I want to say about it. And very different.
So you're saying you're all about prep. So you've been prepping a little bit for this project because it's coming right around the corner, right? Maybe?
You would think, however, if you look around, I am sitting in an office. I'm working on a Netflix show right now. They haven't released anything to the press yet, so I can't say anything. But I'm in prep week 1 right now on this new series.
Wow, you are very, very busy. And yeah, then because you're doing another Western down the road, like in the fall, are you watching more Westerns now? Is your Western knowledge, or you don't even have time to watch all these movies?
I don't have any time right now, no.
Okay. You're busy. I'm going to let you go. I really enjoyed Place of Bones.
Thank you so much. Very nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Bye.
Take care. So I'm here with one of the co-stars of this really awesome Western called Place of Bones. Last 2 years, Corin, you've been in sort of the Western world as a co-writer and ensemble of Dead Man's Hand, and now with Place of Bones. What has that been like just to be able to shoot Westerns? Has this always been a youthful dream of yours as far as the genre?
Hey, you know what? It's been on my bucket list since I first started acting. One of my first, the first movie I ever did, the movie Tucker, that Francis Ford Coppola directed. I was playing Jeff Bridges' son in that, and that was a period piece taking place in the 1940s. And doing period pieces is just an incredible, great experience. I got to do, a low-budget World War II movie over in Bulgaria. I loved the World War II thing. I've gotten to do some 60s stuff and then obviously the space opera stuff with Stargate and whatnot, and a lot of different genres. But I never got anything in the Western genre, and it just ate me alive. And then my buddy Brian Skiba, who directed, we produced Rotten Tail together, which was a Source Point Press published graphic novel that we turned into a horror comedy called Rotten Tail. And then I did a bunch of other movies with him, and he had the chance to turn one of Source Point Press's other graphic novels, Dead Man's Hand, into a script, and gave me the shot at doing the first draft of it, which was tough. And I think I delivered a great first draft, and he did his director's draft on it, the shooting draft, and they made a fun movie with Stephen Dorff and Cole Hauser and Jack Kilmer, a great cast. And what helped because of that, shortly after that, I ended up getting Place of Bones, and it was so fortuitous because to write that script, I had to, when I write my scripts, I do as much research as I'm allowed time for. I'm really into that. I think that the more that I can get a hold of the time period and understand the time period, the more I can bring the time period to life within a screenplay. And so I had just done all this research on what it was like there, what people were like, what the world was really like. The fact that one of the only books that anybody really ever had was a freaking Bible, was a Bible, and that's it. And so a lot of their analogies were biblical references and all this, and so it was interesting to suddenly get this incredible script by Richard Taylor that was so well written, it's so well researched. I mean, this guy is a Wild West fanatic. And this script is one of his babies. It's one of the ones that he wrote because he had to write it. It was because I've done the same thing as him. I have a stack of scripts, 5 feet high of stories that I just had to write because I had to get them out of my head. And that's why this script is so magical, because it's not something that's formulaic, that went through the studio or network system where the script came in one way and then they're like, oh, well, this doesn't happen on page 8. This doesn't happen on page 15. We need to restructure. We need to bring something in, and next thing you know, you no longer have your script anymore, or you're forced to write your script based on that formula. So as a writer, it's unique because you can use the formula to your benefit, and it simplifies things, but also it strips away a lot of that organic just storytelling and natural pacing, that lacks in films today. And so this, Richard Taylor did a fantastic job. I don't even know how Audrey Cummings got a hold of this script. I'm not sure. I know that David Lipper had something to do with all of this. He's the reason why I got cast in it. God bless him. And then auditioning for Heather Graham and Audrey Cummings, the director, sealed the deal. But I had done a small role in another film that David Lipper had produced called Joe Baby, with Harvey Keitel and Ron Perlman and Deacon Lockman, and I did a really interesting performance in a really small role, and that's what got his attention, for this role. And thank God he let me audition for it, and thank God he gave me the opportunity to bring this character to life, because whatever happens with this film, I think it will take on a life of its own online. I think it's so smartly written, and I think it has such a magical twist at the end that I can only say the only other movie I've ever come across in the history of film that got me the way this one did was Sixth Sense. I wasn't ready for Sixth Sense, and I don't think people are going to be ready for this, and I think it's going to be, a go-to film for folks, and it'll be shared a lot. I'm so happy to be a part of it. And Heather Graham was great to work with. Tom Hopper, great to work with. Brielle Robillard, fantastic to work with. Our cinematographer, Andres. I'm not even going to say his last name because I murder it every time. But I mean, the dude did Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. You know what I mean? This is our cinematographer. He's coming with that real, that real vision that Audrey needs to filter her storytelling through. Somebody who's tried and true and, has done this kind of storytelling with a camera before. It's magical. Every moment is a photograph.
Ron, I had no idea. You said in your office or wherever it's located, you have a stack of scripts. We're around the same age. When did that love for writing stories begin for you? Because you mentioned that first draft of Dead Man's Hand. By then, you were probably a very veteran writer because you had that stack. And I might strike out on this question, but did your early passion for graffiti art, is there a correlation between your passion for that practice? Did that free you up as a writer as well? Wondering about that.
Well, yeah, man. Well, listen, dude. The graffiti art. That's like, for me. That's the center. That's the center point for everything. That's where I met the actors that I met, young actors that I met. This guy David Van Gorder, who I first got into the first acting class I ever was in with Kevin McDermott, Center Stage LA. He was famous at the time for being Waldo in the Hot for Teacher video by Van Halen. And we were in the same graphic arts class in 8th grade. And the only reason why we started talking is because he saw me tagging in my book. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, man, I tag too." And I'm like, "What? You're an actor. You don't tag." He's like, "Yeah, I do." And I said, "Wait, actors can be graffiti writers? Like, that's okay to do?" And he was like, "Yeah, man, I'm in a great acting class and whatnot and blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "What?" So I started studying in the acting class. And then I was friends with David Arquette, who was a graffiti artist back in the day, and Balthazar Getty, who was a graffiti artist back in the day. And, and that's how I met up with Brian Green. Even he wasn't a graffiti writer, but he was really into the hip hop culture and the hip hop scene. And we went to North Hollywood High together. And, so that whole culture is what drew me into that world, and being freed up, being kind of how you have to be in the graffiti culture. You have to be fearless. You can't go to a graffiti yard like a timid rabbit, you know what I mean? So it also made me also fearless to a degree in my performances as well, not being afraid to push the envelope and take real chances and really try to develop a 4-dimensional character for people. And this character, Austin Calhoun, is all that and then some, Again, Richard Taylor's writing, the characters that he created in here, you really feel them. There's my character's an anti-hero. He's a bank robber, but you shouldn't like him, but you can't help but like him. But that's the writing, the genius of the writing.
Several months ago, you released a book, Creating a Character for the Stage or Life, and it spotlights something called the New Era Acting Technique. Now, how were you able to apply this new era acting technique for Calhoun, a character who you said is an anti-hero, but he's also, without giving too much away, stationary? It must have been a very physically demanding role for you. So.
Yes, it was. Well, it was so cold. It was so cold when we were shooting. We were shooting in December, in late December and early January. In the high desert. It was cold, man. So I didn't mind just having to, be in a bed covered in blankets for the most part. I was like, dude, I'm okay here. I'll just stay. But the new era acting technique is a technique that I studied with Manu Tupou at the American Repertory Company over a period of 10 years from the 90s into the early 2000s till he passed away in 2005. And it's one of the most magical techniques I'd ever been introduced to in my life. It's a combination of kind of Eastern spiritualism in a way meets acting and imaginary creative techniques that are used to develop an internal world for the character. So it's in creating the backstory, for instance, for Austin Calhoun, I had to work with a great dialect coach that they brought on. And again, I don't have her name here, and I feel so bad about it, but she was so great. And it's in the researching of the character that reality becomes real inside of my mind. So I'm not just saying dialogue and repeating things that are written about, like, say, an event that occurred. If I'm talking about, a bank robbery, and I'm explaining a bank robbery to somebody in present time, I also have to be reliving the bank robbery in my in mental image pictures in my mind, because that's how what happens in real life. When someone comes running in the door and they're like, "You can't believe what just happened to me. I walked into the McDonald's and this guy came in with a shotgun and he was about to shoot people, and I grabbed the shotgun and I raised it up in the air, dude, and he shot it." They go into the moment. So that the background, the history, all of that has to be created in such a way that the living experience of the character is multidimensional like that. They're not just talking about an experience, they're reliving it, and therefore they're expressing words about what they're reliving internally. And that was really the method that he developed, and that can apply to life as well. This creating a character and dropping of a character, since we're all characters, without getting too deep on it, because I don't want to go in the weeds on this, because Place of Bones is the focus. But that we can drop our character at any time we want and develop a new character for ourselves if we choose to. That nothing's permanent. Personality isn't fixed. It's not a fixed thing. We get focused and so fixated on it that it becomes solidified, and we get locked into a personality that we can never get out of. And you become that personality the rest of your lives, for better or for worse. When at any given time, because the personality is just a complex structure of metaphysical attention units, holding it in place, if you release those attention units and you let that go, the idea of self, that's where the spiritual side of it comes in. Then you can breathe and start to play with personality and character and all of that, and get out of this fixed state of consciousness. So that's what that book kind of dives into. And so playing, Austin Calhoun, using the new era acting technique, being stuck in a position where I'm fixed in a place for so long, then that world that has to become very, very multidimensional, so that when the audience is watching me just sit there, they're not watching me just sit there. They're with me on all of the rides and the experiences and everything else that's being discussed or whatever.
I want to thank you so much for your time. Really love Place of Bones, as well as Dead Man's Hand, by the way, and really looking forward to more of your work.
Yes, yeah. Everybody, man, go placeofbonesmovie.com. Follow everybody. All you have to do is just kind of look it up out there, look up a hashtag on X or whatever, and start following everybody involved, because there's some great people, and Audrey Cummings has a huge career ahead of her. She's going to explode after this. I can guarantee that.
Thanks again. You take care.
You bet, Greg. Cheers.
Bye-bye. Cheers.